in endurance athletics, we tend to get really hung up on like our conception of what our body size should be in order to have a good race. Skinny doesn't win races, fast wins races. And if you, and you know, like getting from point A to point B, that's who wins the race. Or it's not like you compare body composition, you go, oh, you're the leanest, you win. It's who gets from point A to point B. And so coming to a race, like trying to focus on, hey, what do I need in order to succeed here? What do I need to have the energy to succeed here? Because, or right before a race, that is not the time, in my opinion, to try to lose weight. It's not the time to try to get absolutely as lean as possible, like the night before a race. Like, it's more about, hey, how do I make sure that when I show up to that start line, I am energized, I am positive, I am focused on what I can do, I have self-confidence, I believe in my plan. And I think a lot of times we, as athletes, can lose so much energy and stress to questioning ourselves and comparing ourselves to other people when, it might be fully irrelevant anyway, because there's so many different things that go into performance as an endurance athlete.
Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm a registered dietitian and running coach based in New York City. My goal for this podcast, aside from having fun, of course, is to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all style of eating. Rather, there are many different pathways towards individualized health and sports performance. I explore this in my athlete nutrition profiles as well as in interviews with fellow dietitians on their areas of expertise. Hey everybody, how is 2021 treating you all so far? I'll start off by saying that this year had a less than terrific start for my family, with my older daughter getting COVID and giving it to the rest of us. But thankfully, we are all mostly better and just dealing with lingering fatigue and lack of taste and smell. So not fun, but I know better than many and we will be fine. So if I sound a little nasally today, that is because I am still recovering from it. So I'm just going to put January behind me and count February as the start of the new year. I think that's a good plan. And I am particularly excited today because it's the first time in 16 months that there are no children in my apartment and I actually have a break from the kids. You hear that? That is quiet. Well, as quiet as New York City gets, at least. I am still recording from my bedroom after all. But today, both my children are in daycare. Daycare is actually open, and there are no huge snowstorms coming in and delaying this beautiful occasion again. So it's amazing. And I honestly can hardly believe it's real. But I'm also really excited because I have an amazing guest for you guys today, cross-country skier and Olympic gold medalist, Jessie Diggins. I've been trying to get this interview on the schedule for ages. So when a last-minute opportunity came my way right as COVID was hitting my family, I said, yes, please. So huge thank you to my husband for watching the kids for an hour while everyone was miserable, and I got to have a super fun chat with Jessie. So who is Jessie Diggins? Well, you may remember seeing Jessie at the 2018 Winter Olympics, where she became the first American, along with her teammate Keegan Randall, to win a gold medal in cross-country skiing after a nail-biting race to the finish at the women's team sprint event. By the way, if you haven't watched this, please stop what you're doing right now, hit pause, and go check it out for some major inspiration. And you may have also been following along her journey. She is an advocate for eating disorder care and recovery, which started after she opened up about her own struggles with bulimia as a teenager. She sought help through the Emily program, which she credits as literally saving her life and allowing her to become the incredible athlete that she is today. She also addresses her many struggles and triumphs and so much more in her recently published book, Brave Enough. Or if you happen to be a cross-country skiing fan, you may have seen that she won the Tour de Ski, which is the ski equivalent of the Tour de France, last month, reaching one of her major career goals while setting history once again as the first American to ever win. So cool. And if somehow you've never heard of Jessie Diggins, then I am so thrilled to introduce her to you today. She is not only an amazing athlete dominating her sport for many years now, but also a great role model for other young athletes and such a fun, positive, and down-to-earth person, as you will hear in this interview. She truly brings sparkle to the athletic world between the glitter on her face, her energetic personality, and all the medals that she has won, and she has won many. Jessie actually holds the most World Cup podium finishes for any American male or female in cross-country skiing. You will notice that our athlete nutrition profile is a bit different than some of my previous ones. because we had limited time for our interviews. So we jumped right into the stuff I wanted to hear about the most, but we really did pack a lot into our time together, as you will soon hear. Jessie, thank you so much again for spending time chatting with me. It was such an honor having you on the show, and I'm really grateful that you are using your platform to demonstrate to the athletic world that eating adequately rather than restricting food is key to athletic success, overall health, and happiness. So please enjoy my interview with Jessie Diggins. Jessie, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. It's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
So I know we're tight on time, so instead of doing my usual long-form athlete nutrition profile, we're going to kick off our interview with where you're at right now. And geographically speaking, you're in Italy. Super jealous, by the way, as it looks so beautiful from your pictures that you've been posting. But I just want to start by congratulating you on becoming the first American ever to win the Tour de Ski about a week ago. That is just so incredible.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, right now I'm in Sizeram, and it is wow, it's absolute paradise. I think this is my favorite place in the entire world to ski, I think. And that's saying that having been to some really beautiful places, but it's such a wonderful way to unwind and relax and recover, and to sort of get your mojo back after the tour takes so much energy from you. But thank you. Yeah, it was an absolutely wild last couple of weeks. It's been really, really fun.
I can only imagine. And we're definitely going to dig into that. But before we start, chatting all things nutrition, can you just briefly explain what the Tour de Ski is and how it fits into your racing season? Because I know I have some listeners who may not be familiar with cross-country skiing at the elite level beyond the Olympics. And I'll be completely honest, I had not heard of the Tour de Ski before I started prepping for our chat. I now know what it is, but maybe for our listeners who don't, why don't you just give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, well, it's sort of like the Tour de France of the Nordic world, but it's a little shorter. So it's 8 races over 10 days across 3 different venues in 2 countries. And it changes year to year. Some years it's 7 stages. One year it was 9 stages. Sometimes you go to 3 different countries instead of two. But this year with COVID, we tried to keep things a little tighter, in just 2 different countries. But yeah, so the cool thing about the Tour de Ski is it's all cumulative. The stages add up on one another, and you have every different sort of race. So there was a skate sprint, there was a classic sprint, there was skate 10 kilometers, classic 10 kilometers, individual races, mass start format, a pursuit start format. And of course, the legendary last day is this climb up Alps or Mies. And so they set gates up an alpine hill, and you ski up the hill through the gates, which is
Wow.
of course different than you're used to seeing people going through gates. So it's brutal, it's hard, it's a serious test of not just your technique and your ability to race different formats, but your stamina and your mental endurance, because it's day after day. Even the rest days, you have to sort of stay focused and stay in it. And so, yeah, it's just an absolute challenge. But because of that, and because of what it takes from the team and our coaches and our WAC support, that's I think what made it so special to come away with the win.
Yeah, no, it sounds so incredibly, incredibly epic. So I'm really excited to hear more about it. And you're in the middle of recovery and training camp with your team right now. So let's start there and we'll work our way back. What does recovery after such a huge effort look like for you, especially from a nutrition standpoint? And when are you expected to start competing again? Because my understanding is like you're basically in the middle of this really long block of competition. Is that right?
Yeah. So what's really cool for assuming that your listeners don't know much about cross country skiing, we have the Olympics every 4 years, and the World Championships the years before and the year after the Olympics. But then every single year we have the World Cup circuit. And so if you're a runner, it's kind of like the Diamond League.
Hmm.
But it's where basically almost every single weekend we have races over the weekend in one country or another. And then on Monday, we pack everything up, we move to the next venue, we train through the week, and then we race on Saturday, Sunday again. And so we had this past weekend off, which was really awesome because we needed that for recovery after such a big
Yeah.
effort. But then we'll get right back into it. And so this coming weekend, we're going to race in Lahti, Finland. Then we're going to go to Sweden and have a weekend in Falun, and then another weekend in Ulricehamn. So it just kind of, it's like this giant circus that rolls through Europe. weekend after weekend, and each weekend has different race formats as well. Um, but to get back to your original question, recovery after the tour, it is interesting because you definitely put out a ton of energy, a lot of emotional energy as well as physical energy. And so for me, a lot of it is really trying to be in tune with my body. Um, so I take like 2 days off. But then, if I notice that, when I'm really tired, my mood changes. Like I'll be kind of sad or kind of grumpy for no apparent reason. And it's because I'm just exhausted. And so if I'm excited to go skiing, then I'm going to let myself go skiing. But I'm going to keep a lid on it. I'm going to go slow. I'm going to make sure I don't go too long. But if I find myself going, I'm not excited to go do this, then the timing isn't right. My body is trying to tell me, like, nope, you're not ready. My brain's saying you're not ready. And then I have to respect that and back off again. So a lot of it is sort of coming up with a training plan with my coach, but then also sort of trying to really be in tune and listen to what my body's telling me, because the tour can be this amazing training and fitness boost for the rest of the season, right? Like 8
Hmm.
races in 10 days, that's a huge effort, but only if you can digest it and absorb it. If you take it in and then you train way too much, you can get overtired, you could get injured, you can just kind of get flat from a racing standpoint. So a lot of it is just trying to really listen to what your body's telling you. And from a
Hmm.
nutrition standpoint, a lot of it for me was trying to gain a little bit of weight back. During the tour, it was hard for me to eat enough just because, when you're racing so hard and pushing your body that hard, you get all this lactic acid buildup. And that combined with the nerves and the stress and the pressure, I would get these crazy stomach aches where I just couldn't eat enough solid food. So I was having a lot of smoothies made by our team nutritionist to try to get in all the calories I needed. But definitely in the week following the tour, again, it was like listening to my body. Like when I was hungry, I ate. Anytime I felt like, gosh, I could use a snack, then I went and got one. So trying to make
Hmm.
sure that yeah, it's okay to be at a relatively low body comp for a short period of time. Just like you can peak your training for a short period of time, but it's dangerous to have it low for too long. So a lot of
Yes.
it for me is like, all right, let's get to a really healthy level. I want to make sure my immune system's firing on all cylinders, especially this year.
Mm.
So from a nutrition standpoint, like at this camp, we've had amazing food. It's Italy, so the pasta's fast, obviously,
Yes,
but
I was going to ask you about that.
yeah, just basically
Awesome.
making sure that I'm getting like a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of carbohydrates. I try to get some yogurt in for probiotics and lots of nuts and seeds. I mean, there's basically everything.
Yeah.
Making sure that I'm getting a little bit of everything that I think I could possibly need, and also anything I think I might enjoy, because a lot of it is mental recovery too. So if I'm like, oh man, like whatever this dessert is that they call hot love. It's like it's a bowl of hot raspberries with vanilla ice cream. It's like, oh, if that sounds good, then I want that, because
They called it
yeah,
hot love.
yeah, high saliva.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds delicious. That's fantastic. And it sounds like you eat all things, that you don't have any dietary restrictions or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I am slightly lactose intolerant, so I can handle yogurt because of the amount of probiotics in,
Yeah.
especially over in Europe. I found the plain yogurt
Mm.
here has been
Yogurt's
okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, but straight milk is a no go for me. But luckily, there's tons of other ways to get your calcium. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I heard you say that you had a team nutritionist. I think I read in your blog you had a chef with you. Is that the same person or are they two different people?
Yeah, well, so we don't normally get to have one on the road just because the budget's pretty tight.
Yeah.
But during the tour de ski, that was a really important time. So Chef Alan Tran, he is a chef, but also a nutritionist or a sport
Nice.
dietitian, technically.
Hmm.
Um, and so he came with us, which was awesome because he would work with the hotel. And it was actually the hotel that was cooking, but he would
Hmm.
go in ahead of time and say, okay, here's what they need. We have one person allergic to chicken, we have one person who's lactose intolerant, and we work around that. And he would make sure that, especially with different language barriers, that we could have like oatmeal in the morning on race day, for example. And he would go out and, if it was like, hey, like I could really use some peanut butter and bananas to put on my oats, he'd be like, got it. And he'd like run to the grocery store and get it for us. So it was great because he would definitely like just he was like our fairy godfather, making sure we had everything that we could possibly need food wise in order to perform.
That is fantastic. That sounds like such a game changer too, because it sounds like, I mean, that is, as you said, that's not something that normally is there, but it sounds like the tour is such this big deal. And obviously it paid, I mean, obviously that wasn't the only reason why you went, but it did pay off. It sounds like that really supported you well. And when you were struggling with the stomach aches and all the stuff, that you had someone to kind of step in and help you out. That's awesome. I mean, I'm a sports dietitian. Obviously, I'm a huge believer in having sports dietitians around and I know available. So I'm happy to hear that that was there for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I
for
want to
sure.
dig into the specifics of your nutrition during the Tour de Ski next. I know you already mentioned a few things here and there. I heard oatmeal, I heard the the caloric smoothies, all that kind of stuff. But as you mentioned, it is so incredibly challenging to be. You're performing at the highest level possible, recovering. You have to recover so fast, day in and day out, and 8 days of racing across. I mean, that's just it's crazy. And then there are all these logistical challenges. There are different places you're going to. The race start times are variable. COVID. I mean, that must affect things too.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, I'm first of all, it's amazing that you were able to do all this in COVID. So that's fantastic. But yeah, the fact that you're able to fuel yourself, I think this is before we get into the real specifics. I want to just give some context to my listeners, and we're going to come back to this later because it's such an important piece. But the fact that you're able to fuel yourself so well without rigidity and restriction, and you pointed this already, you listen to your body, you pay attention to signals and cues, you whether it's training or food, you embrace your body for what it does, not what it looks like. That forms such a strong foundation for long-term success as an athlete. So, before we get into all this, just again, to give the listeners some context, I just absolutely love that message you send out about this. It's why I wanted you on the show. Again, we'll come back to it in a bit, but just want to briefly mention it before we dive in. So I want you to walk us through your nutrition plan during the tour. Maybe you can share like what a typical day looked like if there was one, like what kinds of foods and products you were relying on, maybe what some of your go-to pre and post race meals and snacks were, and any adjustments you had to make along the way, like that smoothie, for instance.
Totally. And what was really challenging was that due to TV times, they changed the race start time on us almost every single day. So
What? Oh,
yeah,
that's
and
horrible.
that's really hard because you sort of, normally you get used to eating at certain times, right? Like you start getting hungry before dinner time. You're used to it. And so we had one day where we started at like 9:30 for the qualifier in the morning. And then 2 days later, we raced at 3:35 p.m., which is a huge swing in terms of trying to figure out, like, okay, body, I need you to digest this food now at this
Yeah.
time. And so for me, I try to keep it really similar in that I'm a big breakfast person. And so
Mhm.
even if it was before the early race, I have oftentimes I'll have like a egg on the side, maybe just hard boiled because that's pretty standard. It's easy to ask in different countries, like just a hard boiled egg.
Mhm.
And then I have a big bowl of oatmeal. And then I put in peanut butter. I was pouring on maple syrup and a banana. And I know that that sits well in my stomach. I know it stays there during a really hard race. Um,
Mhm.
and I know that, it tastes good. So I know I'll eat it even if I'm like really nervous. And so on the days when we had really late races, I would have that same breakfast, but I would have it like 3 hours before the race. And then my actual
Mhm.
breakfast, I would have more like, fruit, yogurt, muesli, more of a European breakfast, whatever I knew I had a way larger window of time to digest it. So I wasn't so
Mhm.
concerned about, um, making sure like this needs to hold okay in my stomach. But then before the race, if I was still hungry, I had sport gummies. So specifically, I had like Probar Bolt gummies, but like,
I love those. Those are
yeah,
yummy.
or like, like Clif Bar Shop Box, like all those things,
Yeah.
like just basically pure sugar, is great. And then I have been using Noon for a long time. And so that was my drink mix of choice. So I got into their prime mix so I could really make sure that I was super hydrated before, especially
Hmm.
for those early starts. You don't want to let yourself, sneakily at altitude get dehydrated through the day and then
Yeah.
start your race like, oh no, like I haven't drank enough. Um,
Hmm.
so basically, my goal was I don't ever want to feel thirsty during the tour. So I just kept making sure that I was drinking. Especially at altitude after the race, you get what we would call a race hack, where you get this bad cough, which is especially concerning this year with COVID, but it was actually just from
Yes.
your lungs in the cold air. It's actually quite common in winter sports. And so I would drink a lot of like peppermint tea with honey to try to like
Hmm.
coat that so I wasn't coughing and keeping myself up at night. Um, but then one of the other things I would do is always have a shake right after the race. And so specifically Nutrimeal, I've been
Hmm.
using for a while. That really works for me. And it's a really good way, like in just chugging a small shake, I could get at least 300 calories, which I knew was crucial because you need that fuel as soon as possible after the race. So usually within 10 minutes of finishing the race, I would drink that shake. And that way I was also getting in hydration. And I knew that I was starting to give my body those building blocks that it needed to be able to like get to work and turn it around for the next day. And then in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
like normal meals, I would say I just tried to eat what was normal for me, like making sure I'm still getting in fruits and vegetables. I want to make sure I get a wide variety of veggies so that I'm getting in, vitamins and minerals and um,
Hmm.
I tried to make sure I always have a source of protein. I always have a source of carbohydrates. So maybe that's, chicken and pasta with pesto on it. Um, or maybe it was, fish and rice or whatever it was with a salad or cooked vegetables. But yeah, just making sure that I've got sort of a little bit of a variety going on my plate so that my immune system can be functioning on all cylinders during the tour.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know you just came back from a team dinner too. So, I mean, is it kind of like buffet style or not buffet because I guess COVID, but I mean, is it kind of like everyone's eating their own thing? Is it like this is what's happening and then you can make some adjustments? Like, yeah, how does that even work when it's a team environment, especially in COVID?
Yeah, so we actually during the tour we did have a buffet, but we all put on hand sanitizer beforehand, and then they had those little like plastic gloves before you went
Oh
through the
yeah.
buffet. So it was great. So everyone would show up and then put on their gloves and then get their food, and that was great because you could choose what you wanted.
Yeah.
Especially because we have a big like I think that's so much easier than plated meals because there's a wide discrepancy when we travel and train with the men's team.
Oh
If
yeah.
you've got a 6'2" guy and a 5'2" girl, they're going to
Sure.
need different amounts. And so
Yeah.
we want to make sure that everyone's getting what they need. So a lot of it is, hey, like, you have the best gauge of your body and how it feels and what you need. Like grab whatever you need. And if it's plated, we'll oftentimes ask for an extra bowl of pasta or extra plate of meat, family style, so that people can get what they need.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And are you ever fueling or hydrating, during a race, or those events are just short and fast? Is that right? Because I don't think I ever see you. I mean, I was watching some events, and I mean, I have some specific questions about the Olympics. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, I mean, when it's just you and it's not like a relay type thing, like you're just going for it. Nothing's happening during that nutrition wise, right?
Exactly, because our sprints are like, 2.5 to 3 minutes. So obviously you're going to be
Yeah,
fine for
yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah.
And a 5K is about 12 minutes, and a 10K takes about 26 minutes. So again, like, you can drink right before the start, you can drink right afterwards. Like, you're going to be fine for those. Generally, where we start taking feeds during a race is in like a 30K for women.
Hmm.
Because that, depending on snow speed, which can be widely variable, maybe it's
Hmm.
an hour 15, maybe it's an hour 45, it totally depends on the course and the snow. But in that span of time, I find that I like to take a feed, usually of sport drink, like specifically
Hmm.
noon, because I
Hmm.
have had struggles with cramping before, like
Yeah.
in my quads or in my triceps. And so that's where I want to make sure, like, especially if if it's warm out for winter temperatures and you're sweating and you're working your body that hard, like you want to make sure you're restocking your carbohydrate stores.
Yeah. And which product specifically are you using of the Noon products?
Yeah, the noon endurance because that
Yeah,
mix
the Podium series
carbohydrate.
one.
And that's what I want to specify is just I love their tablets as well, but those don't have the carbohydrates that you would need
Yes.
during an endurance event. So when I'm training, anything, an hour and a half or longer, or if I'm racing or doing intervals, like anything that's actually quite intense, like I'm making sure there's carbohydrates in that drink mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have so many clients and friends who use Noon tablets. I personally don't like the taste because I think it has, is it stevia or something in there? I really don't like any kind of
They
fake or.
reformulated a year or two ago.
Oh, they did? Oh, is there not anything in there anymore?
I can't remember off the top of my
I
head.
should
I can't
retry it.
remember.
I should retry. Okay, I'll take a look at it because when I was using it before, I remember seeing something in there, but I know they came out with that whole podium series, and I've been meaning to try it myself because I know it's very popular. But yeah, absolutely, it's so important to remember that you need to have carbohydrates in there. People just keep going for these like low calorie or 0 calorie versions, and it's just not appropriate for so many types of training and events. So very important point. Um, and okay, so actually, one thing I want to go to, and then we'll kind of move on from this, is the whole chef and nutritionist point. Obviously, not everyone is able to travel with a nutritionist, except for my husband, because when he travels with me. But yeah, do you have any tips for competitive athletes to make sure they're staying on top of their fueling plan? Especially when they are traveling to big events. That is when the world reopens and things return back to normal. Anything you kind of have learned with the way you've traveled with or your work with dietitians or anything like that.
Yeah, I do. I guess I would say, first of all, test everything beforehand. So if it's the drink mix you're using, if it's the gummies that you're eating in your warm up, if it's the breakfast that you're going to eat, like your race day or in the days before is not the time to try something new. Even if you go to an expo beforehand, you're like, oh, this looks so cool. Like it's so tempting when someone's like, oh, I've tried this, I love it. Like I like to just stick to my plan and don't change things up on race day. And so for me, like oatmeal, banana, peanut butter, that's easy to find or travel with. Um,
Mm.
you could bring oatmeal in a baggie. You can bring, or now with peanut butter, they have all these nifty little peanut butter packets.
I
Um,
know. It's awesome.
yeah, and so it's so easy to bring the things that you're like, all right, I know this works for me, and that's what I'm gonna do. And so that was like for me at the Olympics, I traveled over with a ton of my own products because I knew like, okay, like I know Nutrimeel works for me after a race or in between sprint rounds. I know these gummies work for me before a race. And so that's where, if you think you won't be able to find it, just bring it yourself because it's not worth shifting things around on the day of. The
Absolutely.
other thing I think is that sometimes, especially in endurance athletics, we tend to get really hung up on like our conception of what our body size should be in order to have a good race. And I think it's important for me to talk about this because I struggled from an eating disorder when I was about 10 years ago. And, like skinny doesn't win races, fast wins races. And if you, and, like getting from point A to point B, that's who wins the race. It's not like we compare training logs and go, oh, you train the most, you win. Or it's not like you compare body composition, you go, oh, you're the leanest, you win. It's who gets from point A to point B. And so coming to a race, like trying to focus on, hey, what do I need in order to succeed here? What do I need to have the energy to succeed here? Because, or, right before a race, that is not the time, in my opinion, to try to lose weight. It's not the time to try to get absolutely as lean as possible, like the night before a race. Like, it's more about, hey, how do I make sure that when I show up to that start line, I am energized, I am positive, I am focused on what I can do, I have self confidence, I believe in my plan. And I think a lot of times we, as athletes, can lose so much energy and stress to questioning ourselves and comparing ourselves to other people when it might be fully irrelevant anyway because there's so many different things that go into performance as an endurance athlete that your body composition um, doesn't really rank in that scale of things that are important. But I think it's easy to sometimes shortchange yourself on energy because you're worrying about something that is more visible than your mental toughness, for example.
Absolutely. I was like literally just nodding my head the entire time. So yes, 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 and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. One of the things I loved reading, and you did an excellent. I encourage everyone to read your blog. You have some really excellent posts in there, but you did like that 2-part series on fueling, and I think the first one was more about like just the emotional side of things, and you did a whole another one about support and all this stuff. But one of the things you said, I think it was in part one, was that fitness doesn't have a look. Being lean
Yeah.
is just not what it's all about. You know, telling people like not to comment on people's bodies, like coaches, anyone else who support athletes, do not comment on people's bodies. Focusing again not on what the body looks like, but what it is accomplishing. As you said, the skinny person isn't necessarily going to win, it's who's the fastest. So I love all of that, because all too often, again, I get so many people, they're like, help me with my nutrition. I need to lose weight so I can become faster. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not really entirely how it works. Yes,
Yeah,
obviously,
it's
50
not
more pounds,
exactly
or
like
you're a
one cause.
runner. And that's the tricky part. It's not that it's not like weight isn't part of it at all, but it's not the be all end all that people make it out to be. So yes, 1,000% love that answer. All right. So I want to get now into what training looks like leading up to your whole World Cup circuit or the tour, because now we've kind of established, or I understand better, that the tour really is just one piece of this whole circuit that you're going through. But in the training that leads up to it, does your nutrition differ at all? Does it really just look kind of similar? Because I mean, imagine you're putting in some crazy training hours each day, and my understanding, at least, of cross country, and I may be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're also just doing a variety of types of training. So I've seen lots of long runs in there. Obviously, you're doing strength work. There's just lots of stuff going on. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about, what your fueling looks like, especially in endurance efforts, or kind of in those training times leading up to this whole long period of racing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because um, the cool thing is it's not that different from how I would eat normally. So like breakfast, lunch, dinner, it's sort of what I was talking about, like this balanced plate of, all right, I got some carbs here, I got protein here, I've got some vegetables, I have some fat sources, I have a source of calcium, and that's, I mean, my plate's gonna look like that even when I retire, right? Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
have that at pretty much every meal. But I think the bigger difference is the percentage of carbohydrates that I need when I'm training more goes up. And so, if I know like, oh, like, okay, I had, a 4 hour run this morning, I need quite a lot of carbohydrates. And so I'm still going to eat all those other things, but I'm going to add more carbohydrates. And specifically during snacks, I will add more carbohydrates. That's a really good time to get those in. Um, and so, yeah, maybe it's a bagel with jam on it, or peanut butter and honey, or some way of getting more carbohydrates in, because I know that that is my primary fuel source as an endurance athlete. And then if after strength training, maybe it's a mix of carbohydrates and protein. And of course, I'm going to have some protein after endurance efforts as well. But I know that, if it's just a long, slow, steady state of training, I'm mostly, going to need to restock those sources as well. So, and within during training, if you're on a 4 hour run, I definitely eat during that. So basically, any type of sports bar is going to be great. Any sort of gummies, drink mix, like those things are all going to help keep me stocked up so that I can keep performing during that entire effort.
Yeah, awesome. And I love, you're so cute with your housemate. You guys are like so excited about the things you're grilling and you're making. And I loved like seeing all that stuff. You're like so excited about it. And it just really came out in the way that you were showing your pictures and all that stuff. I love it. It's really nice to see, how passionate you are about fueling yourself and eating and just enjoying food, and that positivity really comes off as well. So all awesome stuff. All right, let's turn to another defining moment of your career. So you became the first American ever, along with your teammate Keegan Randall, to win a gold medal in cross country skiing at the 2018 Olympics. I rewatched that event, by the way, yesterday with my almost 4-year-old. It was so incredible, and she loved it. She like before we hopped on this call, she was like, "Can we watch the skiers again?" She was so excited. And also, by the way, I was watching your finish of the Tour de Ski last night, and your whole starfish flop. I like almost want to make that the photo of this podcast episode. It's like Eric, oh my God, I loved it. It's such like these dramatic finishes. It's amazing to watch. Anyways, in the Olympics, you competed in so many. Did you compete in all the events? You competed in a ton of events. Was it a lot? It was like 8 or 6 or how many was it?
I did all 6.
Oh, 6. Wow. So even though it was over a longer period of time, I think, I mean, I imagine in some ways it was similar to what you just did at the tour, right? In
Yeah, it
terms of
was. It
recovery and
was.
nutrition and all that.
I mean, yes and no, because luckily for me, it was stretched out over almost 3 weeks.
Oh,
Because as cross
I got
country
it.
skiers, we raced the first day after opening ceremonies, and then we raced the last day. So I finished the last race, the 30K Classic, and I had about 4 hours to turn it around before I was carrying the flag in for closing ceremonies.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was the most amount of time between the races that we could possibly have, which was great because I had enough time to really feel that each race could be its own separate entity, and that I was able to really fuel and recover with a couple days in between each event.
Got it. And so was your nutrition plan any different from kind of what you've described so far? Or was it pretty much the same thing that you're doing now?
Yeah, it was actually similar to the late start days on the tour because oftentimes, again, probably due to TV and all sorts of complicated scheduling, we were racing pretty late. Some races were more quote normal around like 11:30 in the morning, but some races we would do at like 4, 5, 6 at night. So that was really challenging, but we basically just stayed on a more of a night schedule. And so I would go to bed between midnight and 1, and I would sleep in till like 10 or 11. And then I would just get up, go for my jog, have a first breakfast, wait a couple hours, have my second breakfast, and then head off for the venue. And so I definitely during the Olympics I'm sure I wasn't getting quite enough nutrients because on those race days, I was like, nope, I'm not doing vegetables like before a race. I can't digest that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not risking it. I don't want that much fiber. So on the days in between races, I was trying to make sure I had like uh, what I would call more normal eating, like making sure I got some cooked vegetables and sources of vitamin C and, more variety. But on race days, I was too nervous with digestion to play around with adding more in than my typical breakfast.
And what was the food situation at the Olympics? I mean, I know there are Team USA dietitians and all of that, and I'm sure there's like a whole cafeteria or something you guys are at. Like, yeah, what did that look like?
Yeah, so they have this huge dining hall. However, right at the start of the games, we got really freaked out because there was like a flu going around.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, and which that'll tank your games pretty quick. So they set up this U.S. team cafeteria, which was really great. So it was in this Team USA house. And the cool thing was it was a place you could go hang out that wasn't your room. That was, you had to have Team USA credentials to get in there. And there were no fans, no media. It was just athletes that were allowed in this side of the house, which was so great because you could go just kind of decompress and
Yeah.
have a really quiet, chill dinner. And they brought their own chefs in, and their own US ski team sport dietitians, or sorry,
Mhm.
USOPC.
Yeah.
And that was really great because yeah, you trusted the food. You knew that okay, they're really being careful here, and you could also request something if you really needed something specific or if you had an allergy. So what I would often do is go there for lunch, and then they had these to-go boxes, and so I'd pack up a dinner of the same thing because it was kind of a commute to get there, especially with the Olympics. They're always scanning your badges, like
Mhm.
security takes so long. And so I would just pack up a whole dinner and then take that and then reheat that. so that I only had to do the commute one time.
Got it. That's awesome though that they had that kind of facility for you guys. That's so great. Yeah, I think because I follow the Team USA dietitian account on Instagram, and I think I saw something like they have all these people traveling, and you can request things, and like they can get food from America, and like I special requests, and I don't know. I imagine that must be really exciting, like especially being in North Korea, like getting a food that you really want and use and all that. But as you said, you traveled with a lot of that stuff already, already had it with you, which is so important, of course. All right, let's talk specifically about the event that you guys won, the women's team sprint freestyle race. I heard you talk about the event on other podcasts, and it just sounded so nuts. Like just hearing. I mean, it's so quick. First of all, again, like in the races I do. I mean, I don't do short stuff or fast stuff, and this it was like I think 6 legs, right? And you guys tag each other in and out, and you have like 2 or 2.5 minutes to rest and get your skis all fixed up, and then you're back to sprinting. So, yeah, what are you doing during those breaks? Is this a situation where you would take a sip of something, or are you just like catching your breath and waiting for your skis?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I go deep into the like that entire day in my book. But the short of it is, I definitely don't drink during it because I'm too worried of like, if you have something sloshing in your stomach. And
Mm,
also because it didn't feel like there was really time because you clip out of your skis and the techs like, stick them right on the wax bench. They're furiously reapplying, powdering, brushing. They're getting the skis ready. Meanwhile, you're jogging around. You got an eye on the jumbotron because you want to see what your partner's doing and tactically where you're going to be tagged in. And then you get the snow knocked out of your boots. You clip back in. You've got your poles on, and then you're lining up in the tag zone. So it feels like, I mean, it goes by so quickly, which is what I love about the team sprint. It's just one huge adrenaline rush for the entirety of the race. And you're sort of, you and your partner have to like make good, clean tags um, and just be really smart with your tactics. So, in terms of like nutrition tactics, I think it's a lot about having tons of energy, being hydrated beforehand, but then during it, um, for me personally, I don't feel like I could probably take anything down in the middle.
yeah, I mean, watching that event again, like, yeah, you guys are such beasts. First of all, like, just watch you guys go up that hill. Oh my god, like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. It was nuts. It's crazy. Oh, I have so much admiration for you guys. You are such incredible athletes. Awesome. Well, I did not have a chance to read your books. I know we kind of got this thing on the schedule really last minute, but Brave Enough is the title of your book. Definitely want to read it. I can't wait to put it on the list and encourage all of you guys to check it out. I'll link to all of this in my show notes, of course. But yeah, I have an eye on the time, so I want to move on to your eating disorder because obviously that's something you have spoken about very openly. You are really passionate about raising eating disorder awareness, especially among young athletes, and just spreading such an essential message to the world that eating adequately rather than restricting is key to athletic success and overall health and happiness. And you really emphasize that being a happy, healthy, balanced athlete is just so important that winning these races, there's so many pieces to it, and being positive, being happy, being well nourished, that is such a key part of it. So first, thank you for sharing your story and being such an incredible role model. Again, I really loved have reading your blog and just reading about this message you're sending out. But yeah, I don't know if you want to share just a little bit, not necessarily like getting into the full story. Again, people can read your book and can check out your blog and stuff, but is there anything you kind of want to share today about maybe what you're doing right now, or any overall messaging that you want to send to my listeners?
Yeah. And I guess the first thing I would say is that I realized that eating disorders and any sort of mental health struggle, it's hard. It's really hard. There's so much more stigma around it, like if
Mm,
I fell and sprained my ankle like I did this year, like it's visible. You can see, oh, she's hurt. Let's help her out. It's easy to ask for help. Um, there's no shame around it. You get all the medical help right away that you need, and you're on your way to recovery as soon as possible. And with mental health struggles, for some reason, there's often this taboo around it. It's harder to ask for help. You can't see it. It's harder for people to have that compassion and that understanding, which is why I think it's so important to talk about because the more we talk about things that are really hard, the more we can normally normalize the idea that, if you're not okay right now, that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. We just want to get you to a point where you can ask for help and receive that help, in order to be healthy and to be happy. And so, yeah, for me, like I struggled with an eating disorder when I was 18, 19 years old. I went to the Emily Program Treatment Center after much encouragement from my parents. And, if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it's that, this, contrary to what my very ignorant brain thought at the time, like, it's not your fault. The expression that I think sums it up well is that genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So, you're sort of primed to have an eating disorder, and maybe you get into an environment such as competitive endurance athletics, as a very perfectionistic type A person, where that sort of sets you off, and there you are. But it's not your fault. You're not a bad person. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just, you have these traits, and this is how you're coping with stress, or you're coping with pressure, or whatever it is. So for me, one of the things that I learned in treatment that was so crucial and so important for me was realizing that it really wasn't about food. It was actually about dealing with emotions and stress, and realizing that I didn't have to be perfect. And I was putting so much pressure on myself that, once I sort of started to embrace, like, wow, I just have to be me. I just have to I just have to do the best I can each day, and that's it. And if I'm not perfect, that's okay. I was able to stop putting so much pressure on myself, and I didn't need my eating disorder as that crutch that I was using it for. So I think, realizing that eating disorders can come in different forms for different people. They can come at different stages of life. They can come from men and women. It's something that can happen to anyone, but it's not your fault, and you absolutely deserve help. And one of the reasons I like to share my story is an example that, you know, while I was in the depths of my eating disorder, I thought, like, this is it. Like, this is going to be my life. Like, I can't see any way forward that doesn't involve my eating disorder. Like, I was really in it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so happy. Like, I have a life. I have time again. Like, I have the emotional capacity to love my fiance and to have fun with my friends. And I have my life back again. And so I think, even if you're someone who's struggling right now and it feels like, this is the only possible way for me, it doesn't have to be. And realizing that your eating disorder is sort of like, like the drunk driving goggles that you can wear when you want to see what it looks like when you're incapacitated. It's sort of like that. It's like, once you're in recovery, it's like someone helps you take off those goggles, and you can see things clearly again. And you're able to see that you are so much better off without your eating disorder. You don't need it in order to survive. And quite the opposite, actually. So I guess for me, it's important to share that story because, I want to show with my career that I'm an example of someone who, is only succeeding because they're in recovery, and only succeeding because they got help and they have a great support system around them. And that it doesn't make you weak to ask for help. It actually makes you very, very strong.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. What messaging do you have for people who may not have an actual diagnosed eating disorder, who are more in that gray area? And I think that includes so many people. I feel like it's almost more common to not have some form of disordered relationship with food than to have one. It's just so common. It's so prevalent in everyone to have some form of disordered eating. And again, it might be in the form of, like, I don't know, a fear of gaining weight, or, like some things might be really subtle. And I don't know if you have any kind of messaging, or just any advice to share for people who, again, they may not have bulimia, they may not be anorexic, they might not be, they might still benefit from seeking help, but maybe it's like a little bit more innocuous, and in the sense that they're not starving themselves, they're not making themselves throw up or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, do you have any kind of advice for those things that still make people miserable, though, because it's like on their mind all the time? Do you know what I mean? Just, but in that
Oh,
gray area.
absolutely. And I think that, like you said, like I think it's so common, like disordered eating habits without a clinically diagnosable eating disorder are very, very common.
Yeah.
And it is hard because, how do you say, well, I should go get help when you kind of look around and you go, well, they're doing what I'm doing and they're doing it too.
Yes.
And I'm just like this person over here. And so really, is this just life? Like, is this just what everyone's doing? But
Yeah.
here's the thing, like here's like a good analogy is if I came up to you and I was like, gosh, I love running. It makes me so happy. I love it so much. But my running shoes are so tight. They're killing my feet. I'm coming away with blisters. It's kind of killing my vibe. Like I think I would love running so much more. But I don't think I want to change my shoes. You would kind of look at me and be like, what? Like, of course, you need to find shoes that fit. Like it's taking away your joy. You're not happy. It's bleeding into other areas of your life. It's hurting you
Hmm.
through the rest of your day. You would kind of look at me like, well, just go to a running shop and get fitted for shoes, right? And so I think that's sort of the way I look at, if you are someone who's like, gosh, I'm pretty sure I don't have an eating disorder, but I never let myself eat foods that I want. And I feel like even when I'm hungry, I don't let myself eat, or I'm scared of certain foods because of,
Hmm.
what I think it might do to my weight or my body shape, or I'm too worried about my body shape to enjoy my sport anymore. Then I would go consult someone. I would try to maybe set up a meeting with a sport dietitian or a therapist, or, the National Eating Disorder Awareness website has a lot of tools where you can take a quiz like,
Hmm.
is this something where I should consult someone, ask for help? Because the thing is, like, yes, I get it, it can be scary and it can be a pain in the butt to set up an appointment, and it can also be sometimes expensive depending on your insurance coverage. But if it's sort of like, this is something, it's your life. It's every day for the rest of your life that, it's like walking around with these open sores on your feet. Like, you don't let it take your happiness and your joy. Like, it's so worth getting help sooner rather than later, because similar to blisters, like they can develop and get worse and worse and worse, right? But if you catch them really early,
Hmm.
then you're like, oh, no big deal. Like I can fix this. I can get around this. So I think that's why I would encourage people, even if you are crushing it, just set up one appointment with someone and see if maybe it is worth asking for help. Because similar to eating disorders, like research has shown that earlier that you catch them, the more likely that you are to have a really good recovery, and a quicker path to recovery, because you haven't become as entrenched in an eating disorder. So I would say, yeah, I guess the shoes blister analogy is the best example I can give of why you wouldn't want to wait.
Yeah. No, I like that analogy. That's fantastic. Thank you. All right. I have 2 more minutes with you. I'm going to do my quick bites question, then I'll send you off to go to bed. Um, what
When
is your favorite meal or snack when you're in a hurry?
I'm in a hurry, oh gosh, avocado and cheese on toast.
Delish. And what about when you're not in a hurry?
When I'm not in a hurry, ooh, I like baking salmon with a combination of miso, butter, honey, and Dijon smeared on top.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. And I saw that you use the Run Fast Eat Slow cookbook, which I also love. So good.
Yeah.
Um, favorite post race meal or snack?
Oh gosh. I mean, we're talking like hours after the race, right?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't have to be your shake or anything.
Yeah.
No, I mean like something you're just
Um,
like craving or you're just like, ooh, I want that.
oh, my fiance makes a very good tomato sausage risotto.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. Nice
Yeah.
fiance. I love
Yeah.
it. What is your biggest cooking catastrophe?
Oh gosh, I tried to make homemade gnocchi for some friends and it failed miserably. It fell apart. It was like a soggy mess. It was disgusting.
You've been all over the world. What is the most bizarre or exotic food that you've ever tried?
Oh man. Oh, I had haggis in Scotland once. That was pretty cool.
Did you like it?
It just tasted like pepper, I think. They just really seasoned it. So I didn't really like it at all.
Oh, okay. How do you like your eggs cooked?
Ooh, I like a soft boiled egg.
what is your favorite beverage?
Ooh, I love sparkling water, like the flavored sparkling water, like grapefruit
Hmm.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What foods remind you of growing up? What are your comfort foods?
Oh, banana bread and um, let's see, probably pancakes.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, a dark chocolate sorbet.
Mm. Have you been getting gelato in Italy? I hope you have.
Yes, we were treated.
Good. And last but not least, top three items of gear that are most essential to your active lifestyle.
Ooh, oh, skis, boots, poles, I guess.
Yeah, that's easy one for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jessie, thank you so, so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome, and I'm so happy we managed to cram everything in a short period of time. So thanks again for making time to chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And again, congrats on the Tour de Ski. Wishing you a speedy recovery and hope everything else in your tour, your World Cup circuit goes well.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's our show for today. Thank you again, Jessie, so much for your time and for sharing your experiences so openly with us. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I also really enjoyed reading Jessie's blog, which you can find over at jessiediggins.com, and I just wanted to wrap things up by reading a few quotes from there that really stood out to me. I referred to them a bit during the interview, but I wanted to read them in full to you now because they are not going to fit into my show notes, so I just need to fit them somewhere. And these three quotes are all from her post titled Let's Talk Training Fuel Part 1. Here's the first one. Healthy, happy, and balanced athletes are the ones that make it across the finish line again and again throughout a long career and leave a legacy. So incredibly true, right? Okay, here's another one that I love. There's no such thing as looking fit. Fitness doesn't have a look. What you mean is that they look lean, but that's only one small factor out of many that comprise an athlete's performance. They may have gotten a new PR, but it may also not be making them happy. By emphasizing their body shape and connecting it to their time, you're putting weight at a higher value than technique, training, recovery, and mental strength. And last but not least, answering a question about the best ways for a coach to encourage and create a healthy dialogue around fueling and eating enough, Jessie says, do not make comments about an athlete's weight. Any comments, at any size. Just don't. I'm not just making this up either. Out of the thousands of incredibly important things coaches and teammates have done to help me achieve a lifelong goal of Olympic gold, you know the one thing nobody did? Comment on my weight, encourage me to lose weight, or comment on the bodies of athletes who are beating me or behind me. It's just not necessary. End quote. I just thought those were really worth spending time on and reading those aloud, so I hope you enjoyed those as much as I did. And of course, there's a lot more in her blog posts, so go check them out, read them in full. And her book, Brave Enough, of course, goes into way more detail as well. Thank you all for tuning in today. I really hope you enjoyed the show. Please do me a favor, consider rating and reviewing the show over on iTunes if you haven't already. It would mean so much to me. And I have a lot more great guests lined up, so until then, have a wonderful, wonderful day and see you all soon.